This was me 14 months ago, weighing 78 kilos. Then this was me about 12 months ago, weighing 73 kilos. 11 months ago, I was at 70 kilos. Then 6 months ago, I was 80 kilos and looked like this. 3 months ago, I looked like this. And now I look like this at 71 kilos. And this is probably the lowest level of body fat I've ever been in my entire life. Apart from that time when I was 17 and I took the cut way too far because I was going to schoolies. So it's safe to say that I've been at many different levels of body fat. I've gotten fatter, I've gotten leaner, I've gotten way too fat and gotten way too skinny. So I've had a lot of experience with body fat and I know what works and what doesn't. The first thing that you need to know, and probably already do know, is you need to be eating less calories than you're burning every day. I won't bore you with the science or the details behind it, but the upshot is that you just need to put the bloody fork down, mate. However, there is actually one thing that you can do to still lose fat that does not involve eating less food. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's cardio. And before you click off this video, let me explain why cardio is actually the best way to go about losing fat. Obviously, when you're doing cardio, you're burning more energy than you normally would, which means you can eat more food or eat the same amount of food as you normally do and still lose fat. So you're not actually having to sacrifice any consumption of food. Being able to eat more food whilst staying lean or actually losing body fat, your body is given more energy to actually train and push hard in the gym. When you're able to train harder, that supports more muscle growth, and that's going to lead to attaining the aesthetic physique, which I think is what everyone wants. Over the last few months, I've been getting outside and running more. And yeah, running does suck, especially when you're starting out for the first time and you're a gym bro and you're just completely out of breath and struggling to breathe. But over time, as you commit to it more and more, it begins to suck a bit less. Then once you get to the stage where running actually begins to not suck as much as it once did, it's actually kind of beautiful because number one, your body is burning more energy consistently, which means you're going to be losing fat over time. Number two, it also means you don't have to sacrifice eating the food that you normally would because you're achieving your calorie deficit through expending calories rather than restricting incoming calories. And number three, I think quite an understated benefit is that you actually have a functioning cardiovascular system, unlike 99% of the population. And I think it just generally feels good to have a cardiovascular system that is effective and works. You can actually climb a set of stairs and not be hunched over, gasping for air at the end of it. It's also nice to not have shots taken at you by your own Apple Watch. Okay, so after all that, if you're still against cardio, there is still a way to lose fat, and it's just that you have to eat less food. I think everyone actually knows that already, but it's just the fact that it's so difficult to do, which is why no one does it. When there are endless amounts of dopamine hits that you can get from McDonald's, donuts, chocolate, it's a very difficult task to do to abstain from eating those types of foods that are going to restrict your progress in losing body fat. The first thing I'll say is that if you can completely eliminate yourself from being in circumstances or scenarios where eating junk food is a possibility, then there's a 0% chance that you're going to eat junk food. So, for example, if there is just absolutely no trash food in your house, well then it's physically impossible for you to eat trash food because you just simply don't have access to it. The only way that you'd be able to get junk food in this circumstance is if you got out of bed or got out of your chair, got dressed, left your house, got into a car, drove to the supermarket or got there by public transport or walked or whatever, go into the supermarket, buy donuts, leave the supermarket, come home, and it's only at that stage you've got access to the junk food. And hopefully because you're in a calorie deficit to begin with, and you've already gone to the gym that day, and you've already done your cardio that day, that you didn't have the energy to get up from your bed and go to the supermarket and buy donuts. My point is that when you make it difficult for yourself to actually be in a scenario where eating junk food is a possibility, then you're a lot more likely to not eat junk food. But I do understand that it's not always completely possible to not be in those scenarios where eating junk food is not a possibility. So what do you do when there's a donut right in front of you and you really want to eat it and your monkey brain is telling you to eat it, but you know you shouldn't because you want to lose fat? Think of it like this. Every time there's a donut in front of you and your brain is telling you to eat it, but instead you abstain from eating it and walk away, you just gained a point in the skill of controlling your eating. And for every time you withhold from eating the donut that's right in front of you, you gain another point of skill over time. And the more that you abstain from eating the donut, the more points of skill you add to the skill of controlling what you eat. And over time, those points of skill add up and it becomes more easy to abstain from eating the donut because that's just how you've trained your mind. You're essentially training your mind to not indulge in eating that donut. But when it comes to it and you really just want to eat it, just stop and take a deep breath. It sounds silly, but after you've taken the deep breath, it actually helps you think. I think, at least. Once you've composed yourself, you're more likely to walk away. Also, if there is a donut in front of you and you want to eat it, what you can do is just walk away. And it sounds so simple to do and it sounds kind of silly, but if you don't even allow your brain to have that mental dialogue where you're debating whether you should eat it or not, before that even happens, if you just walked away and say went back to your room or went to any other room in the house and then started doing whatever activity that you need to do, maybe it's study, maybe it's work, whatever, then eventually you just forget about the donut because the donut's no longer in front of you. And again, you've kind of just eliminated yourself from being in that scenario where eating junk food is a possibility. That can also help. The last thing to be conscious of, or perhaps not conscious of, is that the changes and loss in body fat takes time. The changes are not instant. You saw me a year ago being fluffy, and you saw me today being the leanest I've ever been in my life. It's not a week, it's not a month, but it's just sustained efforts over long periods of time. You will get there eventually, and I think it helps to not think with the goal in mind, because then you're expecting a result within 1 week when that is completely unattainable. And so if you forget about the goal and just commit to the action instead, not expecting something to happen within such a short amount of time, it's a lot easier to stick to the good habits that will ultimately get you to your goal of losing body fat. So hopefully you learned something from this video. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing. We're getting to 2K subs soon. As always, leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one. See you later.